So show of hands, I'd like to see how many of you know someone, maybe it's you, or know someone in the past or someone that's currently struggling with some sort of addiction in their lives. Look around the room. It's at least 85% of you. If your hand is not raised, I guarantee it will be in the next few years. You will be affected by this disease. I want to talk to you a little bit about what it is and what it's not. But first, I want to get you in the right mindset. I'd like for you to close your eyes. I'm watching you. Close your eyes. And I want you to think about that compulsive behavior that you do when you're stressed, tired, angry, maybe even happy, nervous. Maybe it's biting your nails. Maybe it's overspending, underspending, overeating. Maybe it's doing something like smoking, biting your nails, drinking, drugging, whatever it may be. Nod your head if you have that in your mind. Okay, now I want you to open your eyes. I want you to hang on to that because I want you to feel what it's like to be addicted to something. The difference between what you're experiencing as a compulsive behavior and the people that come to my facility is that it's become too large for them. It's either taken up too much money, time, resources, caused legal problems, financial problems, any of those kinds of things, and they can't manage it anymore. So, I want to talk a little bit about the types of addiction. There are different types, and traditionally we think of drugs and alcohol as addiction. Those are chemical or substance addictions, but there's such a thing as a process addiction. Process addiction, which many of us maybe have experienced, and maybe it was one of your compulsive behaviors, it's not quite an addiction, but it's a compulsive coping mechanism, is something that you do, a behavior. So spending, gambling, pornography, sex, when you're having too much and inappropriately so. It could be something overeating, like I said earlier. So it is an actual behavior that's become too much that's causing you problems. The reality of it is it doesn't matter if it's a substance or it's a process addiction, it's the same issue. So the same part of the brain that regulates physical pain regulates emotional pain. And our body often doesn't know the difference between that pain. So think about it. When we have physical pain, we know what to do. You have a headache, you go get something to treat that. But when you have emotional pain, unless you've come from a very solid, emotionally sound family that understands and communicates and explains emotions, you likely don't even know what emotion you're experiencing to be able to find a solution. So I want to talk about what's at the root of addiction. So addiction's not the problem, surprise. It's not the problem. It's a solution. It's a solution to pain. And where's that pain coming from? It's coming from trauma and unprocessed emotions and maybe even physical issues, car accidents, those types of things that lead to addiction of pain meds. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy for you to think about. I heard this the other day and I thought it was brilliant, and so I added it to my talk here. So imagine you have a burn on your hand, okay? And you've got an open wound, okay? If you put a piece of duct tape on that, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's not going to heal. It's going to probably get infected. It can't get the necessary oxygen it needs. It's going to become necrotic, and it's going to start eating the good tissue. So you'll have a trauma, and then it starts spreading, and it starts eating. It becomes a bigger issue for you. But think about it. If you put appropriate wound care, and you put the necessary ointment on it, maybe you bandage it, but then you expose it to air, to breathe, guess what? It heals. And you may have a scar, but it will heal. So that's what I'm here to talk about, is getting a discussion out there about addiction and allowing people the freedom to open up and share their experiences so they can expose the wound and deal with the root cause. Because if you don't get down to that bottom issue, you can white knuckle it through addiction, but if you don't get down to that root cause, relapse is almost inevitable. So I want to share something, and I actually shared this deck with my clients at the treatment facility, and I said, I want you to share and give me opinions on what you think, and what do you want me to say as your voice? Because this is going out to a lot of people, hopefully. And they said, you know what, I actually had some of these things listed here about the fact that they're sensitive people. And I don't mean sensitive like you're going to cry. It means sensitive that you feel life differently. You can feel that person's energy next to you. You can take on that energy next to you, which is difficult. They're also very high IQ. the highest IQ population I've ever worked with in my life. And their emotional quotient, EQ, is off the charts. They're brilliant minds, and they struggle with this particular issue, and they're looking for answers, and the answers lie in getting down underneath to that underlying issue at hand. And the last thing that I noticed about all of them is they're highly creative. They're brilliant minds and creative spirits. So who's at risk for addiction? All of us. Given the right set of circumstances, it could happen to you. And so what I don't want to hear anymore is people casting judgment on other people, saying, you know, if she didn't buy that bottle, she wouldn't be an alcoholic. There comes a point that becomes a physiological and a psychological need to sustain life. And if it were that easy to not buy the bottle, they would have already done it. I will tell you. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I feel and what our collective community feels the opposite of addiction is connection. And you think about it, when someone's rolling into active addiction, the first thing they do is isolate. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. They're not communicating with you. And so your job now, and I'm going to talk to you from a family perspective, because that was my role, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I first want to share a story with you about the power of connection. So 2 years ago, I was on an airplane from Dallas to New Orleans. I was flying to go see my mother, who was dying of pancreatic cancer. I got on the plane, and the airlines told me you got upgraded. Woo, yay, okay, I'm going in the front of the bus. So I move my stuff, and I go up to the front of the bus, and I sit down. I'm on that aisle seat, put my earphones in, have my music going, and I'm listening to my music, and here comes this man getting on the plane. He's doing this, and like this, and I'm like, oh my God, I can feel it coming down the aisle, you know? And I said, you watch, you're gonna sit next to me. He's gonna sit next to me, I guarantee you. And he said, that's my seat. Okay, so he moves in by the window, and he sits down. He's trying to put his seatbelt on. He's still doing this. And I'm listening to my music, and I can't stand it. I can feel the energy coming over, and I can't even just process it. So I popped my headphones out, and I turned to him. I said, dude, what are you on? And he looked at me. Meth. And I said, he goes, how'd you know? And I said, well, let me tell you what I do for a living. So I start telling him about this, and so we're sitting there talking, and so I sat there a little bit longer, listened to him, and he was all over the place, not making a lot of sense, and I finally said to him, who hurt you? Boom. Tears. Tears poured down his face. And he said, you know what? I've never told anyone this. I was molested by a priest. And he said, as a young boy, and I'm probably the only person that ever happened to. And I said, no. Statistics will say that 1 in 6 young men is sexually molested, and it's probably even higher than that. That's just the people that report it. And so I told him this story, and we sat there, and we talked, and it was only an hour and 20-minute flight. And I said, why are you going to New Orleans? And he said, I'm going on one last boondoggle before I take my own life. So the whole trip got very real for me. And I turned to him and I said, you know why I'm going to New Orleans? And he said, why? And I said, my mom's dying. She's dying of pancreatic cancer. It's terminal. She didn't have a choice. I don't know if this is going to be the last time I see her. And he said, but I'll tell you what, she would trade places with you in a heartbeat to have a choice on whether to stay alive or not. So we talked a little bit more, and all I could do was hug this complete stranger. Didn't know him. And I held him, and the flight attendants are looking at us like, what in the world is going on in 3D and whatever G the other one was. And so we're getting off the plane, and I'm debating, do I tell law enforcement I've got someone suicidal on the plane? And he went to the counter, and I went over and said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going back. I'm going back to Dallas. I'm not going to do this. And I said, you want to know something? I wasn't supposed to have that seat. I got upgraded, remember? And you know what he said? Neither was I. So tell me, that's the power of connection. And I learned something very, very valuable that day. I learned that I was casting judgment on another human being who was coming on that plane, who was doing this, and it was just going to annoy me and bother me. And so I learned to reserve that judgment. He gave me a great gift. And hopefully I gave him a gift of hope, that he can conquer this and he's not alone. I also learned you don't know what the person next to you on the airplane is going through. So be open to the moments of connection. They're everywhere. They're all around you. Be open to those moments. So we're going to move on. I'm a family member of someone that struggles with addiction. And I'm not here to tell you that story. That's his story to tell you. But I'm here to tell you my story. And my story is someone who's going to be on the support team of someone that's struggling with addiction actually came to me as a result of the work that I had to do. What I didn't know, I thought you just take someone to treatment when they're struggling. You put them in treatment, you come back whenever somebody tells you they're ready to go home. And that's not how it works. If you're going to be a support system for someone who's struggling, you got your own work to do. Newsflash. And it's hard work to do it right. You got to put the mirror in front of your safe and, what part might I own in this? How am I contributing? How am I creating an atmosphere that fosters a ripe environment for this person to turn to this behavior when they know it's damaging, they know it's costing them relationships? So that's what I had to do. And I'll tell you that as a family member or a friend or whoever, if you're part of the support system, you have a responsibility to do your own work. And you have a different type of recovery. Mine looked like PTSD recovery. And I'll tell you, I didn't even understand that until I had an amazing clinician that actually said to me, you know what, honey, you're having PTSD responses to all this. That's what we need to work on. Once I started working through that, I became a better contributor to the team that was going to support him through his recovery. You know, one of the things and the most painful thing I had to learn was forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, where you untether yourself from the responsibility of that particular. It doesn't mean you forget it, but it means you untether yourself. Compassion is something else that I had to learn. And my clients put this in there. Acceptance. Accept the past is the past. And do not continue to wag your finger in front of someone and continue to make them pay for the sins of past. You've got to move on, forgive them, and accept it and create a new world. So a little bit more about boundaries. If you don't know about boundaries, you probably need to read up on them. They're very healthy things to have. And it's basically laying out what you're going to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate. And you have to stick to them. If you set a boundary and you break that boundary, there's no point. There's no point in even setting the boundary. At that point, you're contributing to this. And then taking care of yourself. Take care of you. You have to be responsible for taking care of you. Self-care is something that's a very important thing that we all need to do. It's a healthy part of life, and sometimes that means saying no to someone and disappointing someone when you say no, and that's okay. And that this was something that I learned in my whole situation. I learned that there's beauty in the ugly. I went through hell with my loved one to get to the other side, and what came out of it for my entire family unit was a stronger set of people, new relationships. I have a new and improved relationship. When someone comes out of treatment, you're going to meet someone new. And you may have to grieve the loss of that other person. Maybe it was your party friend, the person you did a lot of stuff that you shouldn't have been doing with. You may have to grieve that, but you welcome that new person coming in. They have something amazing to offer, and they've done a lot of hard work. People that go to treatment or do any type of recovery type of work, it is the hardest work you'll ever have to do in many ways. So what I want to encourage you, and the theme of our conference here is manifesting your own destiny. Had I not gone through what I went through, I couldn't have helped the guy on the plane. I also couldn't have helped my family. I also could not stand here in front of you and share what I've learned. And I certainly wouldn't be able to do what I do for a living now. So there's one thing, I'm going to look in the camera here, and I want to say this to my loved one. I want to thank him. He's been trying to make amends with me for years. And I said, if you're doing this for you, because it's part of your program, then good. But if you're doing it for me, you don't have to. Because you gave me the greatest gift one human being could give another. I found meaning and purpose in that adversity. I know exactly why I was put on this planet, and I don't deviate from it. If it doesn't fit my mission and cause, I don't do it anymore. So I encourage you to seek out your own destiny and purpose and manifest it yourself. It's not going to come to you. You're going to have to seize it. You might have to wrestle it. You might have to recover from it. You might have to do a lot of things, but you'll come out a new, improved person. So welcome life's adversities and stop being a victim. And tell yourself, I can choose to be a victim, or I can see what opportunity this creates for me, and I will seize that moment. So I'm very grateful to have had this moment with you, and I just want to say thank you.